What's up, guys? George Balekji here with Boston Has Entered the Chat. But hey, check out the latest episode of Foxborough Rush. Travis Thomas and myself go through the latest signings of legal tampering period for the Patriots. And we dive into actually how Josh Dobbs and Matt Collins, my take, improve the roster. Trav doesn't love them, but we talk about all that along with Milton Williams, Harold Landry, all the guys that's on Foxborough Rush. Plus, Sean McGuire stops by to break down what this means with the spending for the Patriots being defensive heavy over the offense, because we know both sides of the ball need to improve. That's Foxborough Rush, wherever you get your podcasts. But now, let's get to Boston Has Entered the Chat. What's up? What's happening? It's Boston Has Entered the Chat time. George Balekji here with Kasey Hudson. Case, how we doing?
We're good. I'm huddling up. I find myself always sitting so far from
I know, it's one of those. You navigate the desk, navigate the chair,
and
get
I try
comfy.
To low-key sneak in so everyone doesn't realize just how down there I am. But I'm
vertically
fantastic.
challenged.
Exactly.
That's what I am.
Thank you. I was trying to lean
short king to short queen.
Vertically challenged situation, but yeah. So other than that, I'm great.
There we go. Get comfy, get situated. We got you guys for a good show today. We're going to be talking about the Red Sox. Latest news for their starting rotation. Brayan Bello dealing with a shoulder setback, we'll say. Lucas Giolito, hamstring. I think it's them being cautious for the Red Sox, but also what that means for the rotation moving forward as opening day nears. We also go into Brad Marchand speaking at TD Garden ahead of the Panthers matchup with the Bruins. First time as a member of the Florida Panthers. Looks weird, still feels weird, but Brad Marchand opens up about the leadership moving forward in his eyes for the Bees and also what free agency can hold. Talk about the Patriots and legal tampering. And as always, we have Ringside review. Athan, Hristodulu, and Keagan Stiefel. Yes, our guy Keegs talks Patriots. He could talk WWE as well. That'll be the latest from Monday Night Raw with Athan and Keagan. It's a really good combo there. So let's get into it. Red Sox starting rotation. As we know, Case, it's Garrett Crochet, Tanner Houck, Walker Buehler. Those are the top three guys. In whatever order, it's going to be Crochet's the ace. But a hit to the starting rotation as they get ready for opening day. Brayan Bello will start the season on the IL as he's dealing with a setback from a shoulder, discomfort he's been dealing with throughout spring training. Right. He won't be ready for opening day. He won't be ready to start the opening series with the Red Sox. He's eyeing an April return to the majors, but what's big is that happens to Bello, who's seen as like a 4-5 starter. Mm-hmm. Lucas Giolito now has a hamstring that's impacting him, so we'll see if that's cautious, if he's ready. And then, of course, Kutter Crawford still recovering from a knee injury he suffered last season. Tough news for the Red Sox. The lineup should be good. The defense should be good. But it's all about being healthy, as we know. And it looks like they'll be starting the season not at full strength.
Yeah, and I think off-season wise, bullpen was a big conversation. So the last thing you want to hear is a load of irritations. I don't want to call them injuries, but even though some of them there are, but a load of irritations heading into all of this. And on the precautionary measure side, I was reading about inflammation, mm-hmm. and sometimes that can be a tricky thing because he's training, he's trying to get prepared. He clearly won't be a part of opening day, so I can understand the IL move because sometimes it's really quick to get something flamed back up again, yep. And then when you're dealing with a shoulder injury as a pitcher, it's just going to completely take you out of the mix. So not the most exciting news, but when you talk about those top three guys, I feel like they can transfer the workload just enough. And there's probably a couple names that have already been kicked around, 3 that I saw for that 4 or 5 spot to start mm-hmm. slotting guys in different ways. So I'm not ringing the emergency bell quite yet. What about you?
I'm not. And, this is all for... Because even if they go into the opening day, the opening series, the opening month of the season 100% healthy, at some point, guys are going to get injured. It's 162 games. It's a very taxing sport, especially with that workload of the season being so long, so demanding. And times where they're playing, 10 games in 10 days, maybe in 3 different cities, mm-hmm. and how it goes in Major League Baseball. So at some point, this was going to happen. It's tough to see it early on. But the point you make about it being inflammation that Bello is dealing with.
Right.
And where... if you re-aggravate it, you just don't want it to linger.
Yes.
And that's the thing with Bello. And then Lucas Giolito felt something in his hamstring from the first pitch in his spring training debut. That's something they could be cautious about.
Right.
Because even there's been hand injuries to the pitching staff where it sounded like the sky was falling and it was like, no, we're just going to be cautious. It's spring training. And even think of a Kutter Crawford dealing with the knee recovery after injuring it last April, making a play in the field. Like, this is part of the sport. At some point, these guys were going to be dealt tough cards, especially in the rotation. But that's where it is. Does a Quinn Priester step up? Is it a Jason Alexander, Richard Fitz, guys that they have in Worcester? This guy would be ahead of schedule, but is it a Luis Perales, 6'1" righty with a good fastball, but also has a good slider? I don't think he gets to the MLB level yet. But it's about having the depth up front is what they've needed. And they have that with Crochet, Houck, and Buehler. On the back end of the rotation, you need guys that can eat starts and eat innings and eat outs. And we'll see when they get to that point. So it's tough that Bello won't be up with the team to start the regular season, but it's baseball. And just look at, I think what magnifies this a little bit is what the Yankees are dealing with. Luis Gil's out, won't be with the team like it's a long time. Exactly. Yeah, like 4 to 6 months it could be. Garrett Cole getting the Tommy John news. That's bad for the sport of baseball. He's a great competitor. He's done for the season. That's a team that's going to depend on Giancarlo being healthy, won't happen. DJ LeMahieu being healthy won't happen. The Orioles are depending on their younger guys stepping up and elevating their game. Once again, they lost Corbin Burns. We'll see if that happens. It is a wide open division. You need the Red Sox to be healthy, to steal a division that is within their grasp because of the upgrades in the lineup, the upgrades on the defense, and of course the upgrade with the ace they have in Garrett Crochet.
I love that you point out the other opponents when it comes to like the run in the East, because honestly, I mean, for Red Sox fans, and unfortunate for Yankees and Orioles, it just kind of sees a more potential path there. Because I will say this, the Red Sox last year, considering the roster that they had, they were okay with their start. They just really fell apart in the second half of the season. So kind of having this adversity up front, I think, is fine for them because it's better that they have the ability, and we saw them be able to pull through certain games, a number of games last season at the top of the year, and then to know that these guys have an opportunity to get healthy and really help you on the back end, which is where you needed it. And then you mentioned the top three. That's where I feel like, okay, let's see what the next man up is here and how we can survive if those injuries that you can't avoid come into the mix, how these other players can help, because it seems a little bit more detrimental on the side of potentially the Yankees as well as the Orioles, who tend to be the biggest competition in the way for the Red Sox. So some of that hype and excitement with these signings, now they feel a little bit more tangible in a sense of like, okay, we can see where the depth lies here and how they'll be able to progress forward. So I mean, if it's going to happen, better now is kind of where my mindset's at on this, and like working through those irritations. And I think that they'll be fine because of who those front three guys are. And like when I was looking at the names that came to mind or whatever, you mentioned some great ones. It's going to sound biased. It always sounds biased, but I'm thinking I like the idea of Cooper because I remember reading about a big game that he had, Cooper Criswell, a big game he had in September where the call on Alex Cora bringing him out of the game, and everybody's like, the flow was so good, he was crushing it, like why would you pull him out? So knowing that he has that ability, how he's kind of already been labeled as a fifth, that's somebody who can come in and kind of elevate in that position. That's what's important too, is if it is a Richard Fitz, Quinn Priester, Cooper Criswell, and at one point in the season, like Sandoval will be healthy and maybe can add. There are the Garrett Whitlocks that are going back to the pen, but a guy that has been a starting pitcher at some point. The workload hasn't worked for him when they put him in the starting rotation, hasn't panned out. He belongs in the pen, and that's fine. But there are the guys with how deep the bullpen is, and they're not done adding. They won't be. Is that it's about just being like eating up outs. They're the starting pitchers that are workhorses, like a Garrett Crochet can be, like a Walker Buehler could be, like a Tanner Houck could be. And then there are the guys that can eat outs, and that's what the point it gets to. It is a long season where it's just like survive series to series, week to week. It's tough news for Brayan Bello because I think this is a season going into, like he's in the right spot for him where he got the extension. The Red Sox got ahead of the market. And he is an out-getter. He's not going to, fan a bunch of batters. He's not going to pile up the Ks, but he's going to go 6-7 innings. He's going to get outs. He's not going to have a lot of walks, and he's going to build up wins. But it just wasn't working for him to be a top three of a rotation guy. Him in that 4-5 spot, I feel like that's good for him at his age, that his confidence needs to build up and to find his game again. It's just tough that you don't want him to feel like he's behind the 8 ball. And it is one of those things, get the inflammation in check, because if a shoulder, it's a pitcher, shoulder can linger. That inflammation, if it builds up and you push, and it's too much too soon, that's when it becomes a serious injury, and that's when it can develop into. That's not what you want to see for a guy like Bello, who's young and promising and can just tie in so many things where the construction of their rotation can be well. They have the guys up front, the main 3 dudes at the top of the rotation. And then when it comes to Giolito, treat the hamstring, don't let it linger. When it comes to Bello, treat the shoulder, don't let it linger. That's when everything could fall into place of what you need it to be. And that's why I was talking about the fact that like irritation, inflammation, it could be a little bit more, you got to be a little bit more cautionary than one would think, since you're just being preventative because of what you just mentioned. Inflammation can continue to just spark its head at the most inopportune moments. So like thinking that April could be a projection in terms of return, like, do you think that it would be worth it?
In a wide open division and a team that's gone 500 the last 2 years, if someone's ready, they go. You take your time, and then is it worth it? If they're ready, yes. I mean, like this is a team that's missed the playoffs 5 of the last 6 years. This has been a long rebuild in the making. And for a guy that, if he is your 4 or 5 starter, he's not going to be pitching as much, as often, get as many starts, then yes, if he's good to go, then he goes, you know? It's not something you rush. And as someone young, that's important to this team, so you don't want to push them. But if they're ready and it is April, then they go at that point, because we've seen this team be in a good spot and then post All-Star break just fall off many times. We've seen them be terrible to start the season, pick it up midseason, fall off later in the year. This is, if he's good to go at the end of the day, you have to put your foot on the pedal and do everything it takes to get to the postseason, because you can't keep missing it. And again, this isn't it's like when a division's wide open, the Red Sox are in that conversation too, because this rotation very well could be the reason it makes or breaks them getting into the playoffs. It's wide open for a reason. It's not their division to lose. It's their division to steal. And I think that's a big difference. If Brayan Bello is good to go, then that's a guy of why they can steal it, then they go that way.
That's actually a great point. I love that, their division to steal.
Yeah.
That's the best way to look at that one. But yeah, I agree, especially because like you talk about the mental aspect of it too, and you don't want a guy just kind of lingering through his injury and not being able, I mean, when you're young, you learn how to pull yourself into those fights and into like through that adversity so that you can be a part of a team without kind of risking anything else. And like he wants to solidify that role as well in a crucial season, because you don't want it to just be hype with the acquisitions that they got in the rotations that they decided to go with from the beginning, and that can mentally work with a guy like Bello. So pulling him in at the right time is important.
Yeah, and it is like you bring up the Cooper Criswell. It's at his age. He's a great story, what he's been through to get to the majors. That's also a guy, I think he was coming off right around 100 innings pitched last season. So that's a point of, to your point, like if it's hesitant with Bello, you have a guy like Cooper Criswell that's pitched a bunch relative to his experience at the major league level. That's a guy that can hold it down possibly. Yeah,
he's got the numbers for that 5 spot or that 4 spot if necessary, and has shown glimmers of reliability, and that's why I kind of looked at him for that.
And it's the depth of the bullpen: the Chapmans, the Hendricks, the Slaytons, the Whitlocks, those guys behind them, the Bernardinos, and when the Sandoval's ready, again, it's just like it's managing a workload on a pitcher and managing to get through the season. And they're not the only team dealing with injuries. And again, it's the same thing of like the Bello shoulder inflammation sounds alarming. It could be a whole lot of nothing. They're being cautious because I like that you bring up like, well, if he's ready, do you rush him? You know, is it worth it in April? It is, but it's not worth pushing him in his acclimation period in spring training, you know?
True. Oh, yes, that is a great point. Like, no need to...
They need the bullpen sessions. They need the starts.
Show at the moment.
They need that ramp up to get into our full form, going out, throwing 6-7 innings pitched, 150 innings over the course of a season, give or take more than that. That you got to build it up the right way. That's what's important to manage, you know?
Yeah.
Along with the timeline of that. Hey, and if you want to watch the Red Sox when Brayan Bello's back or when Garrett Whitlock's on the mound, make sure to stream the entire Sox season with the NESN 360 annual plan, available at an all-new reduced price of just $20 a month paid annually. And for a limited time, get 4 free tickets to Fenway with your purchase. Visit NESN360.com to sign up today. All right, Case, so this is weird.
It
Brad
doesn't
Marchand
look right.
At TD Garden in a Florida Panthers jersey. On your screen, if you're watching on YouTube, that's what we see. We're showing the B-roll. If you're listening, it's Brad Marchand skating around that spoke to be, again, in a Panthers jersey.
No, like
as you see, I'm at a loss of words. What goes through your mind seeing that?
It feels like a cabbie prank. Did you ever see those? I almost said back in the day, years ago. It was a Canadian show that this guy used to go to the rinks and do pranks with the players. Yeah. So this feels like
one of those.
I was just transported back to like a bad.
Yeah,
prank.
It's like the Kyrie Irving, like Uncle Drew stuff. Have him dress up like an old man.
Yeah.
And bust everyone's butt. This is Brad Marchand. Like, how funny would this be?
It's not funny.
It's not. It's still taking a while to get used to. Now, Brad Marchand did speak with the media, and he spoke about the possibility of his return to the Boston Bruins one day. This is what he had to say.
I mean, I can't. I don't know, I guess is how I would respond. I don't know what the future brings in terms of how it plays out in the summertime. I know, it didn't come together now. Can things change down the road? Potentially, but that's to be seen. So, I'm sure we'll have a conversation down the road, but I don't know where that goes. So, I mean, obviously I would still love, like, it doesn't change my love for the city and the will to want to be here has never changed. I don't think that it will ever change. It's just whether it can have a meeting of the minds and kind of come together, but to be seen.
What's your
Still hear the pain in the voice.
So much. It was tough to listen to. I mean, I don't think he's fully processed it yet.
No.
Like, I know he's made the most of it with, the social media stuff, the text messages, like everything else. But like, that very much is somebody to me who has not fully processed it.
It happened fast. He wanted to stay. There's a difference in how much Brad Marchand wanted a year in AAV, how much the Bruins were willing to pay in AAV. Mm-hmm. And it is for someone that's given everything to that hockey team. It is a business end of the day. And him talking at a separate instance with the media, he's saying, like, I've witnessed Don be one of the best general managers in the NHL. I understand it's a business. It was best for both sides. Said all the right things. It doesn't make it any easier to process.
No way at all. And like, something else that I thought about, well, I still try to process this over the weekend, is imagine getting the tap on the shoulder. Imagine being entrusted with following up a guy like Patrice Bergeron and wearing the C on your chest. When you get rewarded that kind of responsibility, I would almost assume a part of you feels safe to stay with this organization. You know what I mean? Like, when you follow up greatness, it almost tells you you're safe. So I think that that's another level of, like, I don't want to call it blindside, because obviously, Brad Marchand has said his part and Don Sweeney has said his part, but it's just like, it just kind of adds to the blind side of the trade.
Yeah. And speaking about that C, speaking about the leaders, who would it be moving forward? Because all the talk is for next season, who would wear that C on their jersey, is what Marchand said about the Bruins' future leaders.
Yeah, I talked to Pasa. I haven't talked to Chuck. He's tried to reach out a couple times, and I talked to him there. We're gonna link up here today. But been with Pasa a long time. Seen him go from a little boy to one of the best players in the world. It's been incredible to see. But they both lead in different ways, and I think they're especially together. The way I look at that is like a Bergie Z type thing, where they're co-leaders, where they have different things that different ways they can lead, and but they've been around, they've seen it, and the way that Z and Bergie have built that culture and what's expected every single day. So complete faith in those guys to carry on that culture and legacy and continue to add to it, not just carry it, but you got to leave it better than you found it. And that's one thing that especially with the term those guys are on, and how young they are, I think they have a great opportunity ahead of them to kind of carve their own path and build a legacy that they're excited about and lead the way that they want to. That's what Z did when he came in, is he had an idea of how he wanted to lead and how he wanted to change things, and he put it in motion. And then Bergie came in, and the two of them just took over and did their thing. So those guys have that opportunity to do the same thing now.
It's Brad Marchand, and they're mentioning, the captains that were the guys that wear that C on their sweater before he got there, one that eventually wore it. And he points out, like, David Pastrnak joined the Bruins when he was just 18. He's going to be 29 at the start of next season. That's a guy that has the A on his sweater. When he says Chucky, of course, he's talking Charlie McAvoy. And I think the key thing is, like, they lead in different ways, is what he points out. But the big part is of the Zdeno Charas, like he mentioned, the Patrice Bergerons, the David Krejcis, the Brad Marchands, the culture that they established in that dressing room. That's what's important for someone that wears the next to carry that on, because those guys, like, it was something serious. Yeah. How good of leaders, the four guys I just named that are now no longer with the Bruins established, now it's time for Charlie and David Pastrnak to carry that on.
Yeah, and that's a tough choice considering what they both mean to the organization, right? Because there's a number of reasons why one would think that it's going to be Pasta, but I think there's also a number of reasons why everyone thinks, okay, Chucky's up next.
Yeah.
I mean, I got a chance to chat with Brick on Hockey Hub, and he just said, both great options, but in his mind, he's like, I could more so see it leaning towards Charlie McAvoy taking over at this next gesture. So luckily, nothing they have to stress about the rest of this season, but it's definitely hard. And plus, when you have a friendship and relationship with the former captain, it creates this, it takes you a minute to find what your style is within that culture. Because it's not like, I mean, to my knowledge, that you can't picture Bergeron as like this overly intense, loud voice. Like sometimes like that's how you identify the Pat Maroons. But you have great captains that know how to speak to the different personalities and the different characteristics in a locker room. That's a unique gift to have. And I think that with the change coming down the pipeline and as this team starts to get a little bit younger, you have to have a little bit of a versatile voice as your next captain.
Yeah, I think that's what's important. And a guy like Charlie McAvoy, I mean, his 200-foot game, the physical play, we've seen the hits he's laid out for Team USA, let alone for the Bruins. That's someone you want to wear the C on the sweater. When you look at it, I mean, think about the guys in that locker room now. It's Charlie McAvoy, David Pastrnak, Hampus Lindholm. Not everyone I'm saying would wear the C, but there's the Jeremy Swayman, the Pavel Zakas, the Elias Lindholms, the guys that are not just paid, but also experienced vets. And now you're the ones that have to be the leader. When you look at it all, like who do you think makes the most sense that, in your vision of like, that's someone I could see wearing the C for the Bees?
Ooh, that's tough because you almost want to lean towards somebody who is a little bit more of a veteran presence and, kind of had the years and had moments of a dynamic career. But I think in terms of, you point out something really great with Charlie McAvoy in terms of like his versatility as a defenseman. I feel like he could speak to a number of things when it comes to the play of the game, and that goes to being able to pull out the best in different players and younger players. And like, I think that sometimes having that collegiate experience is also a unique leadership building tool. Not to say that like juniors and USHL and all these other things aren't equally as great, but you have so many leaders in front of you that you learn from as you're going through the collegiate experience to then chase down the NHL. So I think that can kind of help with an angle of being a leader in this locker room. Yeah,
that's where I go to too. I think it points to Charlie McAvoy. It's just someone that does it on both ends of the ice, is a tone setter. And I mean, David Pastrnak with his shot, his ability on the offensive side is very much a tone setter for this team too. But with Charlie McAvoy, it just seems like everything points in that direction, you know? And I can see it being Charlie Mac with a C, Pasta with an A, maybe a Pavel Zacha or Elias Lindholm with an A as well. Or maybe a Hampus Lindholm when he's back and healthy and with the team full time. And maybe a younger guy, but I think it's way too early. But like the guys that you look like down the line, that's Patras, the Larais, those are the ones that have the A's and possibly a C on their sweater one day too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
even Casey Middlestat, maybe.
I mean, okay, so I've been a fan of this, and it's hard to talk about it at the time when you lose your captain in an organization.
Speak on it now.
That's been the expectation for Middlestat's career. You know what I mean? So, like, considering if this is a good landing spot, if this becomes the right system for him, he's been through a number of coaching changes. He's been through a lot that hasn't given him the opportunity to fully establish his game. Yeah. I don't know if I'm being overly optimistic here, but I feel like this could be the spot. Yeah. With the changes that are taking place, I feel like Middlestat has the ability to now solidify his game, and everything that we have seen that's great about his game can really come to life with this Bruins organization. So honestly, wouldn't be surprised. And he stepped up in Colorado when they went through a number of roster changes due to injury. Their leadership, their veterans were consistently going down and being impacted by injuries, and he was a pretty solid guy in the locker room and for that organization. So I feel like this is a good fit for that.
Yeah. And that's a guy, I think he entered the league, he was like 19. I think he was 18. Dude. He was like a end of the season ad, so his true rookie year is 19, but been in the league since 2018, 2019. Yeah. This is his third stop, but as someone that has a good game, can be a good scorer, you want to see him tap back into that like 55, almost 60-point seasons that he had when he was with the Sabres. But someone that's been in a locker room like the Avs, that is a championship locker room, like has that experience being around those guys, now put his fingerprints on this. That's someone where who wears the C is important, but who also wears the A is important as well.
Oh, absolutely. Because that's, I forgot who I was talking to about this, but I just remember in my time covering the Lightning, like Stamkos had a very specific style to his leadership, but depending on the tone of the game, depending on if there was like a 3-game skid or they were going through like they couldn't win on the road, it wasn't Steven Stamkos that was waking up that locker room. It was Pat Maroon.
Exactly.
And when it wasn't Pat Maroon, it was Alex Killorn. So the A is equally as important, because depending on what's going on in the season, depending what voice you need banging around in your head, that's where, okay, your captain's your captain, but you need to hear from the alternate right now.
Yeah.
Like, you need to hear from this guy's style.
Yeah.
So I feel like he could have a presence, but I totally couldn't agree more. The A is equally as important.
Exactly. The guys that have that voice in the room. All right, we'll end it with this, talking Bruins. It's going to be tough to see for the folks listening. You're listening, for the guys and folks watching. This was a photo posted by Sam Bennett on his Instagram story. Him and Brad Marchand side by side. Hockey is such a unique sport. Because you go back 2 years, Sam Bennett sucker punching Brad Marchand, knocking him out, giving him a concussion.
Yep.
And this one, now they're teammates going for a cup.
Still scumbags.
Yep.
Just
couple of them.
Just a couple of
Throwing
them.
Kachuk too. It's 3 of them.
You know.
And that's what the team is. It's 4 lines up front. It's 4 lines on the back end.
It would be overload if Kachuk was actually playing right now, and
that's what
this
it's gonna be.
Actually happened. Well, I mean, it did actually happen. It's happening. We're watching it. Yeah, that's probably one of the coolest things about hockey. Cool and depressing as a fan.
Yes.
Yeah. And unique as well, because the guy that you just went, or previous example, like the Superman punch on the ice at Toronto a couple nights ago or whatever, that could be your teammate in the drop of a dime. And now you guys got to be cool. Yeah. So it's different. And the social media post when Pat Maroon ended up coming to Boston after being with the Lightning and all the things. So hockey stays unique. It
is. One of the better sports. Love that they police it on the ice. Hey, if you want to hear more about the Bruins and Boston sports, check out Nesson's Daily Sports Podcast. Boston has entered the chat, and you can enter the conversation by tweeting at us using the hashtag NessonChat or email thechat@nesson.com. Boston has entered the chat, available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever else podcasts are found. All right, okay, so talking Patriots. At the time of this recording, the deals that are agreed upon before free agency kicks in Wednesday at 4 p.m. and then everything becomes legit. The Patriots have agreed to terms with Milton Williams, Hristodulu, I'm going to get that pronunciation right, Harold Landry, Robert Spillane, Carlton Davis, Morgan Moses, Mac Hollins, a wide receiver, Josh Dobbs, backup quarterback, and of course bringing back Austin Hooper. The Patriots continue to make strides. They've upgraded their defense at every level, and in times where their run defense, the defense was awful all around, but especially in rush defense and quarterback pressures, dead last in sacks. That's what Milton Williams, Harold Landry brings, and Robert Spillane to help out there. They were awful in efficiency, allowing points per game and also points per play. That's what Carlton Davis and again Robert Spillane helps with. And they were awful up front blocking, and that's when Morgan Moses helps. They were awful in the red zone. That's how Matt Collins helps. The Patriots have been tremendous so far in the legal tampering period. A lot more left to be taken care of, but they've been really good so far.
Yeah, no, I love the breakdown of that, because I think it puts the minds at ease, because it may have not been the splashiest moves, because I know we've talked about a number of opportunities of certain guys and grabs that they could get, but it's sensible. It makes sense. And that's what's going to help this team pick up even faster than what the timeline is projected to be for them to start making an impact. I mean, I could speak to the Carlton Davis grab. You're talking about a guy that I covered when we won the Super Bowl with the Bucs, and he has a versatility to his game. He can kind of help out in a number of ways. He just has to freaking stay healthy. But outside of that, they did the right thing in helping on the defensive side. But what the heck are they going to do for wide receivers? Because that's what I want to hear. That's the next piece for me, where it's like, give Drake May a guy. I'm kind of leaning. I know that there's an opportunity to nab in the draft, but I feel like he's going to need an appropriate veteran presence to get that tempo down, to get acclimated to a new system even faster, and just it's going to help elevate his game in a number of ways.
I feel like it could end up being where Brandon Cooks makes a return, and that's a guy that was just a great pro when he was here with the Patriots. Someone that's familiar in the building, familiar with Josh McDaniels, and whether it's his stops with, and it was one season he spent in New England, but it is whether when he started with the Saints, when he was with the Patriots, when he was with the Rams, when he was with the Cowboys, when he was with Houston, wherever he goes, he's such a consistent professional receiver, and that's what they're missing. And a guy that will be around 32 years old at the start of the season, that's still someone that helps extend the field, blocks his ass off, is a good deep ball receiver, is a game changer, isn't the flashiest signing, but a Brandon Cooks makes sense. And in a way of a Mac Hollins, where when it was signed, I was like, they're getting a wide receiver in 3. But when you look at the offense, they were 30th in red zone and touchdown. They were 30th in touchdown percentage in the red zone. So every time they got to the red zone, they were the worst team, one of the 3 worst teams in the league at converting that to 6 points.
Right.
And they were 30th in the league in yards per point. So the amount of plays and how many yards and how much you'd have to gain just to get points on the board. Like they were basically, it was like 3-4 yards per play, which is awful. No big playability. Mac Hollins helps that out. 6'4", 220. Good downfield receiver. Really good in the red zone with the big catch radius. And good versus man. They have no man beaters.
Right.
And if it's someone like a Brandon Cooks that's out there, will be 32, has been with the team before, familiar with the building, and he could be a bargain price. He could be 1 or 2 years.
Yes.
Around $6 million a year and teach. There's going to be 2 rookies in this wide receiving room, like minimum, and they need that. But you can't give up on a Jalen Polk or Javon Baker yet either. That's a guy with a Matt Collins that can help mentor them and help them be better pro receivers. So like that's where it goes. No matter what it was going to be, Casey, because the wide receiver free agency class was weak, it wasn't going to be exciting. If it wasn't a Chris Godwin or DK Metcalf, it wasn't going to be exciting. But it doesn't have to be exciting like a Harold Landry or a Milton Williams or a Morgan Moses or a Robert Spillane to make sense. And that's where it's at for the Pats, I feel like, right now.
Yeah, a sensibility can do wonders. But kind of adding to that, I love that you went with Cooks. I tried to talk with Travis about this the other day, but you mentioned the blocking capability and the capability of doing it well.
Yeah.
Considering the scheme that McDaniels is going to run or be more consistent in, you need to have that receiver that has that ability.
Yeah.
And it's going to help with the red zone play. So I think that this is a guy, as you mentioned, familiarity. He's got some versatility to his game. He can help mentor up any guys that come up underneath him, and you're positioning yourself for the next couple years to come versus just like trying to make an immediate impact next season. And
that's a guy with the average depth of target still like 12 yards plus. Down the field, that was the issue with the Patriots, is that they just didn't have man beaters and guys that would get open down the field. You just need smart receivers right now. It's a 3-year rebuild no matter what. You just need smart receivers.
Thank you.
And that's what it was with, we showed the image on the screen too. There was like that, what you were expecting, what you got. There was a Brandon Ayuk's being rumored, the Chris Godwins, it's back on the screen. Cooper Kupps, like Devontae Adams, and then it's Matt Collins. But that's how this is going to be no matter what. That's how it was going to be underwhelming in a way. But sometimes it's going to be a long-term rebuild. And there's a reason none of those guys have been here yet as of right now. When you talk about the Cooper Kupps and the possible receivers out there, good receivers like that don't hit the open market.
Right.
And that's what it is right now. Hey, for more of the Patriots free agency, check out the latest episode of Foxborough Rush, available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and wherever else you get your podcasts. That's Foxborough Rush, with new episodes dropping every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, wherever you listen or watch your podcasts. Now I'll toss it over to Athan and Keagan with the weekly Ringside Review, the latest on Monday Night Raw.
Welcome into another edition of Ringside Review. I am your host, Athan Hristodulu, and joined alongside today by Keagan Stiefel, a wrestling fan who I did not know was a wrestling fan, and I'm pumped to have on today. We're coming off the heels of another Monday Night Raw. The road to WrestleMania is in full swing. We have a triple threat that is been kind of heavily expected and rumored for some time now, basically confirmed at this point now. And we also got another triple threat building, and John Cena continues to be absent. So a lot to get into today, a lot to discuss. But Keagan, we got to get into it. The big one from last night, in my eyes, the highlight of the night. Yep. We have ourselves a bit of a triple threat being put together here. Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, CM Punk. Looks like they're heading towards that triple threat that the internet wrestling community has been all over for a while now. Before we even get into the discussion on that, thoughts on the match overall? Because in my eyes, that felt like Madison Square Garden-esque between the two of them. Yeah. The heat that Punk and Rollins have together is magical. I think they have great chemistry. Fantastic match overall, some really good spots. But just your thoughts on the match before we get into the details.
Yeah, I thought it was great. There's not to get super like wrestling nerd on people, but I have a problem with a lot of the way WWE does these gimmick matches where it doesn't feel important. And I think since Triple H took over, now they're starting to feel important, where just the psychology of these guys are in a steel cage because they hate each other and they want to beat the shit out of each other. And this whole like escape the cage, climb over the top, ask for the door to be opened. I feel like 5 or 6 years ago, we would have seen guys try to do that, even though it's supposed to be this heated feud, and they're not doing that anymore. There was that bit where, I think Rollins asked for the cage to be open, and he kind of said, "You want to go? You want to get out? I'll let you win the match if you escape." And then Punk turned around and did the same thing. Mm-hmm. And then when you mentioned the heat that they have together, clearly two guys that don't like each other in real life, which is always like the best storytelling, device that you can use. Just two guys who legit hate each other. and they work stiff against each other. I think there was an aspect there where Rollins ripped off Punk's shirt and he chopped him. And I don't know what happened there, maybe something, but it kind of just looked like Punk headbutted him a little bit and was like, are you serious? Are we going there? So whether or not that's them just being really, really good at their jobs, or if they legit hate each other, the lines are blurred there, and it makes it more fun for me to watch. I don't know how you feel about that.
No, absolutely. I feel like when it comes to building rivalries like that, one of the more underrated recipes to the entire meal that you can get, if it's there and available to you, is a legitimate real-life beef. And the constant, do they still really hate each other? Have they squashed it? And this is them just working off of that past issue that they had with each other. The fact that that line is always blurred and it feels like you can never truly know unless you know type deal. Like, I love that. It's perfect for this type of rivalry. And which is why I was kind of hoping that we were going to get something of a singles match, whether it was between them two or Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. I wanted Roman and Seth obviously being the kayfabe storyline arch rivalry, but you have the real life one between Punk and Rollins. I love when you have that in a one-on-one, especially at a main event like that. But now we're heading into the triple threat. So Roman Reigns, ultimately, as Seth Rollins is, I guess, close to potentially winning this match here, gets dragged out of the ring. And I don't know what WWE was trying to pull here, especially for those that felt like maybe they knew what was going on here. A lot of people seem to be in on the whole Roman might interfere in this match thing. I know I definitely wasn't alone with that thought when I talked about it last week, but the fact that they hid the camera shot from him, and it was great camera work when it happened, but the fact that the crowd was going insane, and you're like, what is the crowd freaking out about? Like, these guys are just laying here, and Roman out of nowhere just rips him out of the cage. I thought it was good camera work for the moment, but I thought it was also funny they were trying to make it a surprise, as if people were expecting this. But I want to get your opinion on this, because Jason and I had talked about this a lot in the last few weeks about this potential triple threat match here, and get your take on just where this could, like, how they're going to make this work, because the seeds got planted last night. Heyman obviously coming in to check in on CM Punk after the match. Roman, after already taking out Seth Rollins, clearly took a bit of offense to that. And you can see right here, made men the Garden Heyman hustle, this Roman Reigns tweet right here. It's interesting because Roman has, I guess, claim, you could say, as Heyman being his wise man over Paul Heyman. So he clearly had a problem with Paul Heyman going in and checking on CM Punk. And in storyline's sake, obviously he must know in the back of his mind, Heyman owes Punk a favor. With all of this going on right now, we now have a loose end tied with Punk and Roman having beef, with Roman attacking him now over the Heyman situation. Are you okay with this triple threat? Because I had been banging the table for a Seth Roman finally settle the Shield breakup type beef moment at WrestleMania. We've kind of gotten the match already at like a Royal Rumble a few years ago. Roman ultimately just knocking out Seth Rollins. But I want that definitive blow off. So I'm disappointed we're not getting that. But I want to hear your take on this. And what would you do from now to WrestleMania to get somebody like me, I guess you could say, really invested on this triple threat that I didn't want to see?
I think first and foremost, like you said, everybody saw this coming. This was, if you've been paying attention since the Royal Rumble, it was, obviously the three of them all get eliminated around the same time. Seth does the double stomp in Roman and it looks like he kills him. Like, you felt it coming. It was, for me, my problem was, how are they all intertwined? And I understand the favor aspect, I understand the Shield aspect, but getting it all together to make like one cohesive story didn't feel possible to me. From what we saw last night, or on Monday night, it's starting to come together a little bit. I still don't love the idea, because we've known it was coming for so long. It almost feels like they're shoehorning a third guy into it, whether that third guy is Roman Reigns to the Punk and Rollins beef, or if it's Rollins to Roman Reigns, or if it's Punk to Rollins and Reigns. It feels like they were shoehorning a guy in. I don't know where they go from here to make it feel more cohesive. Like I said, I think it starts with the favor aspect and what you saw on Monday, where, Heyman is in the ring, like you said, and checking on Punk, and Roman just kind of snaps, right? And I wonder if that's the storyline, where he finally, like, we've seen cracks throughout the last 2 years, really, since kind of Cody came into the picture with the title, where Roman was cracking, and there were a little bit of cracks just here and there. And I wonder if they just go full-blown, he loses his mind. he goes crazy, and he's just out for blood with both of these guys. And can you get Rollins and Punk to maybe feel a little bit less like rivals, and they're kind of just protecting themselves from Reigns? I wonder if that's the way they go, but I really do think there aren't a ton of obvious avenues for them, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I feel like I've just been really stuck on is how does WWE make this make sense, and to your point, also not feel like you're adding Roman Reigns to Seth Rollins and CM Punk, or you're adding CM Punk to Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. And I really think it's going to come down to Paul Heyman, and something tells me that's probably it's going to have to come down to that, where it's going to feel like a three-way hate triangle through Paul Heyman, right. And he's going to have to do some of the heavy lifting there, because I understand you want to make sure you have guys like that on the card, but my biggest issue is it just feels like you have one too many people that should be maybe vying for a championship that aren't vying for a championship right now, because Jey Uso is with Gunther, and everyone here who watches knows how I feel about how that build's going right now. But for me, it's gonna go through Paul Heyman, and like you said, I like the angle of the Roman Reigns finally snapping, because you would have to assume Punk is gonna pull the "be in my corner" card for this match at WrestleMania. Yeah. And maybe that's what leads to the final break in the cracks that we have been seeing from Roman Reigns, because that's definitely something that we have seen over the last couple of years. So maybe that's the direction it goes. I do like that. Another thing we need to get into, and this is more just me wanting to be able to revel in John Cena for a little bit more as somebody who grew up on the John Cena era. Cody Rhodes comes out last night. He cuts another promo. We have him in the ring alone, no John Cena to be found, no The Rock to be found. It feels like Cody's doing a lot of this heavy lifting until Cena comes on to Raw next week, which is interesting that his return is going to be on Raw, because this is something Jason and I had passed back and forth, but just where the build was going to take place, if it was going to be on Netflix, if it was just going to stay on SmackDown. I know the championship, even though it's on SmackDown, had a lot of play on Raw last year, and it seems like that's the route they're going to go again, because Cena's going to be on Netflix next week. My concern right now is having Cena as absent as he is going to hurt this build in the long run? Does it help or hurt the fact that he's playing this suited up allegiance to the upper management of the business now in The Rock, and him not being around as often? Does that add to his heel character? Is this hurting the build? I want to get your thoughts on that, because in my eyes, excuse me, I want to see Cena in a suit in the middle of the ring, cutting that scathing promo that I know he can cut when he does it as a face, but I want to hear it with him as full-blown for the business John Cena. So I want to hear your thoughts on that.
I think there's a decent chance, even if it's a few words, we hear very little of him leading into WrestleMania.
Don't tell me that.
Because the way I look at it, and we're booking a year out at this point, right? Like, we all know, I think you've probably seen the report, Saturday night's main event in December is going to be in Boston. I would imagine that's going to be Cena's last show. So you've got 7 or 8 months to kind of book out here. The way I look at it is you see a very small amount of Cena, and it's kind of hints of what this character is leading into WrestleMania. And WrestleMania is the big reveal. I don't know how they would be able to do that and keep people interested, because listening to Cody Rhodes, as much as I like Cody Rhodes, and I think he cuts a hell of a fiery babyface promo, him messing up words and getting frustrated almost with himself is, I think, tremendous. I love watching it because it feels real. But you can only get so much of that. There's 6 weeks, right? Or I guess at this point it's
40
a little bit
days,
less. But
so whatever that is.
Yeah. 4 or 5 weeks left until WrestleMania. It's like, are we going to watch the same thing over and over again? But I like the idea of WrestleMania is the reveal. That's when you see heel John Cena in the tights, in the boots, which, like, praying that's what we get. I don't want black jorts, because he did that when he was a face, and it's
that also has crossed my mind. Is it black jorts?
Yeah. Give me just bad guy John Cena. I don't want to hear a new theme until WrestleMania, and then he gets his title run. I think he should win it at WrestleMania. Whether or not I'll be back on to discuss that, we'll see. But I think he should win it. He should get a small, maybe even leading into SummerSlam. Let's see how long it is. But that's when you get the experience of the heel John Cena, and then it flips on its head. The back half of the year, he's back to being a face. He fights The Rock. He fights whoever. Rides off into the sunset. So the way I look at it now, you have enough time until he's gone for good to play this out, really get people interested. Then you get the actual heel run where you see him all the time, and then you get the one last babyface run. So I kind of like the way they're doing it. I don't need to see him every week. We'll see him next week. They're advertising it. Who knows? WWE's done this in the past where they've advertised one thing and they've shown us something completely different. But next week we'll see him. Maybe he's off for a couple more. Maybe you get one more kind of sneak peek into what he's looking like before WrestleMania, and then that's when we start really what we see as heel John Cena.
All right, I like that. I didn't know that Saturday night's main event was going to be in Boston. I'd seen the rumors of okay. Well, if that's the report, I would assume that that's probably something they're going to try to do. That because that would be great, and I will be booking tickets for that. Absolutely,
tickets, right?
But it makes sense too because there's also like the reports prior that they might do like a ruthless aggression thing. So yes, that's a good bet. I'm going to have to look into that. I will say this. I like your idea of not getting the full reveal, like in-ring attire, the music, all that stuff at WrestleMania, because it's just going to add to the build. Like him maybe just coming, like, and then like the one thing I'm struggling with, like this, how does he come out to the ring next week? I guess is it just going to be in a suit? Is he going to have music? Is he going to come out with The Rock and maybe The Rock and him come out together? Is it just going to be Cena and Punk? Like you never really know. Like Rock just kind of does his thing, and like the last time The Rock appeared on a show, we found out the day before it was going to happen. So we got 5 more days until next Monday Night Raw to see, but I like the idea of a big reveal. The whole thing and we're kind of on the same page with this too, is my thought process is we get heel Cena for now. He wins the championship, and in some form along the way, it's gonna feel maybe like empty to him as that hustle, loyalty, respect guy finally doing the heel thing. Right. Maybe it's not what he thought it was gonna be, doing it the way he did, and it turns into ultimately him losing, realizing his mistakes, and we get the final face run. One last thing we need to get into here, and this is something that we've had some discussions on here as well. The Women's World Heavyweight Championship match. It's going to be a triple threat. I'm going to bang the table on that one now. I don't think anyone's really confused about that. My issue is just what they're doing to Io Sky, and I want to hear your take on this one. I have a legitimate concern that Io Sky is being used as basically a second fiddle to Bianca versus Rhea. I know that there's the whole angle of Rhea has never beaten Io. That was actually something that kind of went over my head in their initial matchup last week. And with that in mind, I know that's there now, but they even kind of showed it on air. You have Io in the middle of Rhea and Bianca going at each other to the point where she had to like insert herself into the entire conversation by smacking them both up, which I love. That puts her front and center in a situation where she feels like she is the third wheel in a championship match where she's champion. I'm worried that she's there to eat a pin at WrestleMania so they can protect Bianca and Rhea. Am I alone on that? I want to hear your thoughts there because that is my legitimate concern, and I don't want to see that for Io because this is an opportunity that she has been grinding for, and she finally has. But WWE is even showing us that on camera at this point.
Yeah, there are a few things better as a wrestling fan when you're, like you said, banging the table for like, I see it coming. Please don't do it. I don't want to see this full time or come to fruition, and then they play into that where that's exactly what they're doing with Io. She's a second fiddle. She's really just holding the belt for somebody to beat her for it. Give somebody their big baby face moment at WrestleMania, whatever it might be. But they've started to play into it, and I thought last night the visual of these two like powerhouse, just all time ass kickers are beefing in the middle of the ring, and she's like looking up and she's trying to stop them, and they do the hand in the face. They kind of mush her back. Both of them do it, and then she snaps and she smacks them both. And one thing that I've really liked that they've done so far, and it's really only been a week, but they're giving her face time where it's not for a long time when it was Damage Control. Obviously, Bayley was going to be the mouthpiece because there's the language barrier there, whatever it might be. But now it's go out there and talk and show your personality because she's so animated and she's so charismatic that they're actually giving her the platform now to do it. And I like her more now than I ever did before because even though, her English is her second language, obviously, and she's not able to cut a scathing promo like maybe a Bianca or a
Rhea Ripley.
Rhea might be able to. Right, sorry, I blanked out there. She might not be able to do that, but she can still showcase her personality. And in terms of a baby face where all three of these women are technically baby faces, Rhea's kind of flirting on that line. Who knows if Bianca was involved with the Jade stuff. But she's really the baby face here because she finally won the championship and she showed that she's on the same level of these women. But now let's really play into that, where in a battle of three women who are all kind of sitting on a similar plane, she can really truly shine through as the fan favorite. So I've enjoyed what they've done. I think it's another situation where you've got 4 or 5 weeks to, is she going to get lost in the shuffle? How many times can you tell this story? This almost feels like it would be the penultimate Raw before WrestleMania kind of angle here, because when she snaps and she showcases what she does. So we'll see moving forward, but so far I like what they're doing.
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad that that's where you're at with that, because my concern was starting to get to me that maybe this was what we were seeing, just and they were literally outright showing us. But I never thought of it that way, so that's a good angle. And I hope you're right. I genuinely hope I'm wrong on that, and she's not second fiddle. And this is them putting her in a role where she's competing with, like you said, 2 powerhouses, 2 big name household wrestling names, and this is finally her limelight, and she's getting it. I hope she runs with it, and I hope WWE lets her. But that's going to do it for today's edition of Ringside Review. Keagan, thank you so much for joining me today. If you all made it to the end, as always, greatly appreciated. We'll catch you next week after another Monday Night Raw.
Oh, shout out to Athan and Keagan. Love the Ringside Reviews. Liked hearing Athan. He always talks. Liked hearing Keeks talk a little bit of WWE. She's Kasey Hudson. I'm George Balekji. This was Boston Has Entered the Chat. Appreciate you guys making us a part of your day. Make sure to like, subscribe, download, rate, review wherever you get your podcasts. Also, go to Neston's YouTube page. Hit the subscribe button. Leave a comment. Leave a thumbs up, and you'll join the chat. For Kasey and George, see you guys next time.